What's going on, friends and family? I have been talking about gaming versus gambling for the past decade plus. As your expert in play, today I wanted to get us all in the starting line for the argument and debate of where we actually finally draw the line, where we dissect and define gaming and gambling. And I think that now we can do that because everyone has rallied behind the negative attention of Balatro, which is the indie darling of the year, I believe so, because it was a Game of the Year contender.
And the game award goes to Balatro.
A game of card flipping and solitaire aesthetics that just got hit with an 18+ rating just because it looks like gambling. Now that doesn't feel very fair, I think, to most gamers out there, especially when a game is so beloved and kind of interesting and you want to share it with more people, maybe even some people who are younger than 18, just like get people into this. In fact, I wouldn't even doubt if Balatro would eventually be used in game design schooling. However, the 18+ rating kind of damages its reputation and honestly perverts really the whole concept of what is gaming, as well as undefines what gambling truly is. Frankly, we've had an invasive, pervasive perversion of our gaming spaces, our sacred third spaces where we go and hang out with friends or go and escape reality, which has been brutal and dark recently, so that we can go and redefine ourselves, and explore ourselves in these fantastic worlds. That's not always dragons and castles and sci-fi spaceships. Sometimes it is just freaking cards. And it doesn't mean that it's any less impactful. These are amazing experiences. However, when you do have loot boxes, gacha systems, or financial incentives, things change. It gets a little wibbly wobbly. And well, if you've played especially any Eastern online games or mobile games, etc., you know what I'm talking about. And I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page now with Balatro getting hit with that 18+. It feels wrong, and immediately you think of games like, well, what about FIFA? What about Genshin Impact? What about exactly? That's the stuff I've been talking about for the past 10 years plus, and it's time that we really get down and dirty. Gaming versus gambling. Meet me in the comments below. Where do we draw the line? So as your expert on play, my opinion is that there isn't quite a line. Maybe it's dotted at best, but it's going to feel way more like a Venn diagram. And to those exact constraints and definitions, we're going to have to fight about it as a community, as cultures all have to come together to really define this presence. But let's start the argument with gaming and gambling may seem like opposites at first, but maybe they're not so different in ways. So gaming is a skill-based fun. It's an activity that you participate in actively, pressing the buttons or giving commands of some sort, whether it's slaying dragons, scoring goals, or solving puzzles. Gambling, on the other hand, it's all about taking a financial risk in hopes of maybe hitting that jackpot. There's chance very heavily involved, if not literally the ultimate decider. But when a game walks a lot like a slot machine, it talks a lot like a slot machine, it does get a little tricky. Balatro might be the most iconic of this example for right now, but there's many that have happened throughout the years, starting with roguelites, or maybe you could even say trading card games in general, even if they are not literally trading card games physically, but just digitally. There is these elements of chance, drawing, randomness, and the odds against or for you being very heavily a deciding factor in your success as a player. If you played roguelites for any amount of time, you definitely know that it's very much a gamble. You are, as a player, gambling on these mechanics. You are playing odds, and they are gamified, and it's pretty fun. You don't have any money in and out systems, so it's not gambling, but mechanically it is gambling, but it's also not. See, this is why we need maybe actually even a whole new word. Because then let's actually do the opposite. What about a game that we all know is literally legally defined as gambling, such as poker? But poker also is a skill-based game where you play the odds. Drawing and chance is a part of the gamification, but in fact, actually, strangely enough, the money aspect is also part of the gamification, and the betting and the pressure and the stress, and oh no, things are kind of getting muddied, isn't it? I mean, I would even argue stuff like true, just pure betting, such as fantasy football, etc., actually has gamification when it comes to research, statistics, data analysis. There's a lot of skill that goes into this, and maybe people should be rewarded putting their money where their mouth is. It's very complicated. But let's go ahead, ring it back. Let's start with Balatro. A quirky deck building strategy game. It has no gambling, zero Zilch. Legally. And yet, because its visuals borrow from casino culture like chips, cards, it's been rated 18 plus. Why? Because it feels like gambling, apparently. That's it. It's a bit unfair. That's the unanimous decision of the internet. Balatro is a pure strategic game where all the risk is imaginary and all the rewards are digital. Yet it's lumped in with games that actively exploit real-world gambling mechanics. Now this points to a bigger issue. Are we judging games by their mechanics? By literally how they are? Or just kind of by their vibe? I have been analyzing, reviewing, making, and marketing games for a decade plus, and I'm telling you right now that the average consumer, all the way up to the people who mistakenly put Balatro as 18 plus for gambling, everyone absolutely does judge games based on a vibe. There is no mechanical, philosophical depth to the analysis as of yet. So this problem is definitely bigger than just the definitions of gaming and gambling, but however, latching onto this is probably the most important because this is the beginning of a lot of, I think, true regulation that can happen in defining games, in better spreading games, marketing games, and making them, but also literally getting these games to the people that deserve to play them or pulling them back and to sort of save others that aren't quite ready for certain experiences, such as gambling. Real gambling is actually across all sorts of titles that definitely children and financially illiterate people can actually participate in. Let's go ahead, flip the script. Let's talk about FIFA. A beloved soccer game. It's got a darker side, and we all know it. Its Ultimate Team mode lets players buy packs with real money, hoping for rare, high-value players. It's the same psychological hook as pulling the lever on a slot machine, except this time instead of coins, you're going to get pixels and cleats. And then you have Genshin Impact. I mentioned multiple times on this channel for things that it did amazingly, even to the point of its music making me cry, where I go to conventions to listen to its music. But at its heart, it is an open-world RPG, with gorgeous landscapes, compelling gameplay, that is its truest self, and yet also at the same time completely spearing through every mechanic basically. The incentive is there. Gacha. Randomization mechanics, random progression mechanics, which is fun in a lot of games, but this one intersects with your wallet. The gacha mechanics are pure gambling. Want the shiny new character? Weapon? Need new stuff and things just to get over the challenge or the hurdle, you're going to have to roll for it. Not just in this game, but many, especially Eastern online titles, especially mobile games. And it costs money, guys. Or, here's a fun kicker, or maybe you can grind for the free currency or grind for odds and chances of getting the thing so that you can have odds and chances of getting the other thing. Yeah. Well, maybe EA was right. In fact, as an expert in play, I would say they are right. I'm telling you now, the most downvoted comment in Reddit history is correct. EA said that you get a feeling of pride and accomplishment from being able to grind up and earn these achievements, earn these items, characters, etc., despite the fact that they do also cost money. It is because it costs money. It is because it is such a grind. There is truly that satisfaction. There is a sunken cost fallacy. There are many predatory hooks that get people to enjoy it, and this is one of them. It's strange to say, but sometimes making something exclusive or expensive and then giving people the ability to rise up to that and earn it just simply is enough to get people to do it. I would say this is incredibly predatory to people who have, obviously, gambling addictions, financial illiteracy, or just straight up, they are young. This is why whenever I see a game that does these things, I always call it out. Even if it's against popular opinion, I will absolutely always do that. And now I feel like we live in a world where the average person is starting to catch on. But in saying that, developers are going to find new hooks and new ways to obfuscate and disguise, overall, the experience, so you kind of don't even realize what's happening. That's why it's important to talk about this right now. These systems that mimic the highs and lows of gambling in a casino, but they evade regulation by claiming, hey, it's just a video game, there's dragons and stuff. Hey, it's just a video game, it's sci-fi, it's tanks, it's etc. Yet for many, the real-world financial stakes feel all too real. If it's trying to be competitive in the game, if it's just to get a really cool skin, sometimes you can literally take stuff out or sell accounts or sell items to make money. There are entire streaming ecosystems, content creation ecosystems of pure gambling. And this does spread outside of video games into just general gaming, tabletop gaming, and I am definitely going to call out Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, these sort of like investing style content creators who are literally just opening packs, and you as a viewer get a high for it. They get a high, they get rewarded for making this YouTube content. I've mentioned this with my gacha streaming videos, as well as just the kids who are coming in trying to play. Oh, I didn't get my shiny Charizard. I don't get the cards I have. I have to buy more cards so that I can be competitive. This is gambling. And this is also why I don't participate in card games like I used to. Now understanding that, oh, this is just completely designed to be predatory. This is legitimately, effectively gambling. So with this, there definitely seems to be this focus on aesthetics, right? Of what is or isn't a game or gambling. And some games have actually been forced to tone it down because of their gambling-like mechanics or aesthetics. Similar to Balatro, but yeah, anyways, it sparked backlash. Let's take Peggle, guys. Peggle, the iconic puzzle game. Originally, it featured a slot machine-inspired reels, but later versions had to replace them to avoid gambling-related controversy. Peggle. We're talking about Peggle, guys. Or what about Animal Crossing's New Horizons? The game famously removed its fortune cookie system. It's a playful nod to chance-based rewards in Western markets to avoid comparison to loot boxes. Even games as innocent as Pokemon have felt the heat. Remember the casinos in the early titles where you can get like Porygon? Those were replaced with safer minigames in later versions. The industry is so spooked by gambling regulations that it's leading to really bizarre outcomes. Games that aren't gambling feel pressure to self-censor, while others like FIFA boldly double down on mechanics designed to drain wallets. And now we have a pseudo-gambling epidemic. It's not just big names. Mobile games are ground zero for this pseudo-gambling phenomenon. Think games like, yeah, I'm going to say it, Raid Shadow Legends, or even Clash Royale, which is the game that I streamed probably one of the most, and like I actually had the most donations, the most viewers. It was a fun game, but once I actually started getting those donations and realizing I was making more money to open packs to obviously fuel a gambling addiction in some sort of like weird parasocial way, that's when I was like, oh, this is really important that I stop doing this. I quit streaming, and I have since refocused to be more doctorate with my expertise in play. More dad, I guess you could say. I don't want to be that person. Randomized rewards don't define gambling, but it can drive players to spend again and again if those gambling mechanics incentivize and link in or literally are the microtransactions. Actually, in fact, we shouldn't even say microtransactions anymore. It's just simply monetization. There is nothing micro about any of these experiences anymore. These games borrow just enough from gambling so that they can hook players, and it is intentional, by the way. There's entire careers on monetization scheming, just so that they can avoid the legal fallout by not offering monetary payouts. If you know anything about the pachinko system in Japan, there is always going to be weird psychological or literal systems in place so that it's not technically gambling. But I think it's time that we really nail down the definition of gambling. The problem here, the issue, is psychological manipulation. Even without money on the line, technically, these systems exploit the same addictive loops as traditional gambling. Bright lights, celebratory sounds, and the tantalizing promise of a big win. All things that we also champion in school for game design. I remember that was one of the first things we learned in Full Sail. How they use the sound of like a soda pop can opening or whatever for the Gears of War headshot sound, or the Call of Duty sounds. These things matter. Victory bells. This is all very important when it comes to game design and the feedback. And gambling just really knows what gets people to sit in their seats. In fact, when I actually visited Las Vegas for CES, I noticed the entire city, the entire experience of walking around Las Vegas is to get you into casinos, to sit down, and to be not reminded of anything else but gambling, but to want to gamble, and to really stay inside of it and don't even want to leave. Everything from the fact that there's not many benches. Literally, I found none. There is nowhere else to sit unless you want to sit at an arcade machine. And no, that is not Pac-Man that you're going to be playing. It matters. At the heart of this debate is a question of fairness and safety. Games like Balatro face harsh ratings just for looking the part, while titles like Genshin Impact rake in billions by exploiting addictive behaviors. Meanwhile, younger audiences are exposed to systems they don't fully understand. Frankly, I don't think the average gamer understands. That's why I'm making this video. This is important, and parents especially are left wondering why their credit card bill has skyrocketed. This also affects how we see games as a whole. Should gaming remain a place of creativity, challenge, joy? Or is it becoming a Trojan horse for monetization schemes that prey on the same vulnerabilities as gambling? The fact is, especially if you played mobile games or Eastern online titles, you know exactly the truth. That it has been completely and utterly infiltrated. And I'm saying it's time to put a stop to that. And it can start here in the comments section with you redefining what gaming and gambling is, making your own content, making your own games, and spreading the love, and as well, voting with your wallet. To move forward, we need better frameworks to classify and regulate games. Aesthetic resemblances should not be enough to banish a game to the 18-plus corner, but neither should gambling-like mechanics hide behind the mask of a soccer game or RPG. Transparency is key. Developers need to disclose how their systems work, governments need to step in with appropriate regulations, and players need to stay informed about what they are engaging with. Now, I would interject here that it is going to be incredibly difficult to do that, especially when games are ever evolving, especially with clearly games as a service. And this is where we have to get philosophical. This is where definitions can't simply be a single word. There could be literally a game of simulation of a casino, but it is not online. It is free to play. It is simply just a work project that somebody made. That's not gambling. That is just a casino. It's just a simulation. It's just maybe even a work of art. And then you can have the opposite, where it is a game that is this full, epic MMO experience where hundreds and thousands of players can all play together and they're living a fantasy world, but you do have to pay to do certain things in the game or to be competitive, or maybe potentially you can earn money from playing this game. These things clearly are different, but it's not always going to be clear to everyone, I suppose, and it's not always going to be clear to even people who think they know, like myself. You could probably challenge me in the comments, and there might even be some games where I'm like, oh, I'm really going to have to chew on that. That's the fight that we have ahead of us. So, my closing thoughts. Gaming and gambling, they're fundamentally different, and yet the overlap is growing, and there has always been somewhat of an overlap. But the purest definition of what is it mean to game, what does it mean to gamble, they should be polar opposites. Gaming means to interject, to play, to touch, to change the outcome. Gambling should be the opposite, but with the ever-growing complexity of gaming and gambling experiences, there is room for these two things to sometimes be the same, and they should be regulated in such a way. A video game that has gambling that is actually gamified, etc. But cases like Balatro and FIFA highlight how much this conversation really matters. It's not just for the players, but for the future of gaming. I would even dare say for the future of the definition of play itself. So next time you crack open a loot box or roll for a character, I want you to ask yourself, am I gaming? Am I having a gamed experience? Or am I gambling? And what does that mean for the games that we love? Stay playful, friends and family. I'll see you in the next one.